Hello and welcome back to Truckee Talks. My name is Maya Schneider and I'm your host for the show. Today's show will be dealing with crime here in the Truckee area, and our special guest with us today is Captain Jack Beyer. Jack Beyer is the Chief of Police for the town of Truckee, and he's also with the Nevada County Sheriff's Department. Jack, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Maya.
We've
Thank
got
you.
some things to talk about here. We've got some crime, unfortunately, going on in Truckee. Before we get to that, if you would please tell us a little bit about what your background is, where you came from, and how you ended up here.
Oh, my career goes back 30 years. I started with the Department of Corrections and then progressed to the Highway Patrol, and then I just came to Truckee and I've worked my way up the ranks within the Sheriff's Office.
And you've been here with the town of Truckee for 17 years?
For 17 years.
All right, that's nice to know. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on here in Truckee. First of all, there's been just a general increase in the population here in town. Has that had an impact on the activities of your department?
Yes, it has. Any time that the population increases, then the crime's going to increase.
Mm-hmm.
And this being an area which is also tourist-oriented, the more people you get in for recreation, both summer and winter, crime's going to increase.
Are there problems specific to Truckee that may not occur in other towns of our same size because of our tourist economy?
I don't know about being just specific, but crimes in general are a little more apt to happen here just because of the large influx of tourists.
Mm-hmm.
And any time that you have an interstate running through a town like ours, and you get 30 to 40,000 people on a weekend coming into our area, it's just an opportunity for crime to occur.
A large influx of people, it's hard to manage that kind of numbers.
That's correct, yes.
When we talk about managing those kinds of numbers, let's go back and talk about your department a little bit. What kind of staffing you have, and is it appropriate for the number of people we have here in town? What are some of the challenges you have in staffing your department?
I run basically 2 shifts, a day shift and a night shift, and we're on what they call a 10-hour plan, where the deputies work 4 10-hour shifts and then they're off for 3 days. We try to maintain a minimum staffing of 3 people, and we do that with a supervisor and 2 deputies, or 3 deputies at one time if a supervisor is not available. We don't feel at this time that that is adequate to provide what we feel in the Sheriff's Office is a minimum service level. Mm-hmm. We feel that our workload is increasing approximately 10% a year, and we'll get to that in a little bit, I believe. That in order to stay up with that increase, we're asking the town for additional staffing this year.
Maybe that's a good time to hit on what is going on with the town right now. Many of our viewers don't know that the town of Truckee actually contracts with the Nevada County Sheriff's Department for the services. So these are not town of Truckee employees. Can you talk a little bit about the meetings that are upcoming this month? That's
correct. As you said, we contract with the town. And currently we do not have a contract, but we're on a month-to-month with the town. Mm-hmm. And on the 25th of this month, the town is holding a law enforcement workshop. It will be sometime in the afternoon. I don't have a time yet.
Will those meetings be open to the public?
Yeah, they are public meetings. At the workshop, my understanding is that there will be 2 issues addressed. Number 1 is the budget and the contract with the Sheriff's Office for the 96-97 fiscal year. Mm-hmm. The other portion of the meeting will be a consultant's report on whether or not the town should form their own police department and discontinue with the Sheriff's Office.
With the contract with the Sheriff's
Yes.
Office. And did you say that you'd actually be going into these conversations with a request for more staffing?
Yes.
Are we on par right now with other towns of our size and our influx of tourists as far as staffing? Do we have less than those other towns our size?
We feel we do, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Must make your job a little bit tricky to try to manage.
It is, and when Truckee incorporated in '93, our deputy staffing was 2 more than we currently have. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're going back and asking for more. We're trying to bring us back up to where we were prior to the incorporation.
Levels to prior, okay,
Yeah.
I understand. Let's talk a little bit, if we can, about the types of crime that we have here in Truckee. I know myself, being a transplant from an urban area, and I know many people come up here to Truckee seeking some peace from the urban crime. Mm-hmm. And we come up here, and I think what's happened is that a lot of us tend to bring our crime with us. Is that in fact the case, or is it the increasing numbers of people moving here from other areas?
It's a little bit of both. The gang situation is a lot of families are moving here to get away from the gangs, yet their kids are what we call wannabes, and they're not really that structured yet, but we are starting to see tagging.
And wannabes being want to be a part of a gang.
Want to be a part of a gang, but don't have the backing in this area yet. So you're getting 2 or 3 kids who are trying to become a gang, but they don't have a gang. Under the penal code is 5 people, and as long as you don't have 5, you're not considered a gang. You're just a wannabe, you know, even though you go out and spray paint and that. Burglaries are a big problem here because of all the second homes, and that we're so close to the interstate. You know, somebody can be driving through, stay 1 or 2 days, watch an area, hit 2 or 3 houses and be back on the freeway and gone. And
in no time.
And our percentage rate of capturing them is really bad.
Do you get much cooperation from other agencies in trying to solve those kinds of crimes, or are you pretty much left on your own devices to do that?
No, what we do in this area is we work real close with Placer County and Taos City, and we work real close with Reno PD. Sacramento being 100 miles away, there's a possibility that some of our stolen items turn up there, but most of them are turning up in Reno in pawn shops.
Okay.
So we work real good with them.
So residential burglary is one problem, and later on we're going to be talking about neighborhood watch programs and how people can get involved.
That's good.
Neighborhood watch may be one way. Are there other things that residents can be doing to help prevent residential burglary?
The old days, if I can use that phrase, are gone. You know, it used to be you never had to lock your car, and you never had to lock your house, and you always left windows open, especially on a warm day like today. You can't do that anymore. Now you have to secure your home, you have to lock your car, you have to take valuables out of your car so they're not in view. If you leave your car parked someplace and you do have valuables, you need to put them in the trunk. Just the little simple things that you had to do down in the valley before you moved up here, and you're going to have to continue to do up here.
Pretty basic measures, but still
Basic.
Locals can be resentful of having to do that.
Right.
When I talk about the difference between locals and folks who have recently moved here or people who are just passing through, in terms of the crimes that are reported, and I'm not sure if you'll have numbers on this, how many are committed by people who live here and how many are committed by people who live in other places?
I don't have those figures.
Okay.
I wouldn't even want to guess, to make an educated guess, because I don't have those.
Okay. But just by sheer numbers we're running into problems.
Yes.
Car theft? Is that a problem in our town?
Car theft, as I said, is becoming a big problem. I was really surprised, and until the town incorporated, we really didn't keep many stats on what we were doing. But now that the town's incorporated, we're required to get more stats. And we're averaging 50 stolen cars a year in these last 3 years.
That's a high number for
That's
a town
a high
of
number.
10,000.
We're recovering about that many too, both that were stolen from Truckee and from out of the area, but 50 cars in a year from a community like this, that's a lot of vehicles.
That's a significant number.
Right.
Are most of those joyride thefts, or are they thefts to be dismantled, or do you have an idea?
We've had everything from steal your car and take your stereo out of it to steal your car, and we've never seen it again.
And never see it again.
Yeah.
You were mentioning statistics a minute ago, and I had the opportunity to review some of the town numbers over the last 94 and 95 especially, not so much 96. And there has been an increase. You mentioned earlier 10% per year increase.
Right.
Is that sheer just increase in numbers in the town population, or are there other factors that may be contributing to that increase?
It's a little bit of increase in the population and with the tourists. As you know, we just finished the 4th of July weekend, and the town was packed. You know, it was major gridlock. And we're just getting more and more people living in Truckee, and we're getting more and more people coming to Truckee either to go to Reno or to the lake.
And just passing through
Just
and on
passing
their way to
through.
recreation.
Yep.
Okay. Let's talk about some other types of crime that are occurring here in Truckee. Juvenile comes up. One of the groups that we've been working with here in Truckee Talks is the group of high school folks here from Tahoe Truckee High, and we've had the opportunity to work with some really terrific kids. But is juvenile crime a growing problem?
Juvenile crime is a growing problem.
And what kinds of crimes are we looking at there?
The biggest crime from juveniles is residential burglaries. And unfortunately, the system is so impacted already within the county that we've had occasions where we've arrested juveniles 3 times before they went to court on the first time around. Tagging, as I said, is starting to become a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And these are, agreed with you, there's a lot of good kids in Truckee. These are a small
Mm-hmm.
minority, but they make the rest of the kids look bad.
Look bad.
Yeah.
In terms of punitive measures, do you find it hard to press charges against juveniles, or?
It's not hard, it's just hard to get them into the system.
Mhm.
You know, all it takes is paper from us,
Mhm.
from a deputy writing a report and submitted it to probation. The impact is, due to budget cuts, probation and the court systems are so far behind that, as I just said, some kids are out repeating crimes just because they don't think anything's going to happen to them because it takes them so long to get to court.
There's no consequence
Yes.
for it, right?
Yeah.
And certainly throwing them into the system is maybe only the better choice for those who are really hardened or on their way to crimes. If there are other
That's
ways that we
correct.
can deal with these kids, more preventative measures
Mhm.
than reactive. What about drugs in our community?
Drugs is becoming more and more of a problem. Again, the interstate, we're a major distribution center for both Reno and the Sacramento area.
Mhm.
We have an uncontrolled airport, which means that anybody can fly into that airport, land, and then take off again without, especially at night, without anybody knowing it.
No registration of
No
flight
registration,
landings or-
flight landings or anything like that. And we have documented planes coming in, shutting off their lights, being met by a vehicle, unloading something, we're not able to get close enough, and then taking off right away.
Hmm. Last on my list of things to ask you about in the types of crime category is domestic violence, and it's pretty scary to me to find the numbers of domestic violence cases popping up in Truckee. For watchers or viewers of this show, I'd like to add too that in a future show we will be dealing directly with the issue of domestic violence and its impact on our community, but I'd like to ask you about that. Is domestic violence on the rise with every other sort of crime here?
It is, but I was really surprised when we talked prior to the show. I went back to the office and started digging through the first 6 months of this year. We've only had a half a dozen cases that fall under the actual domestic violence section of the Penal Code, which is 273.5. What I don't know is how many officers wrote domestic violence cases and actually charged the husband or the wife with battery.
I see.
So that could run the numbers up.
And would that have represented a decrease from last year's numbers in the same period?
It's a decrease.
Well,
yes.
that would be good news.
That is
It'd be
good
nice to hear
news,
some
yes.
good news. We're going to be taking a brief break, and after we come back from our break, we'll be talking with Captain Beyer more about crime in Truckee, more about statistics, and hopefully more about some solutions that citizens can take into their own hands and certainly help out the law enforcement agencies
Sure.
here in town.
Sure.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Truckee Talks. Our special guest today is Captain Jack Beyer. Captain Jack is the Chief of Police for the town of Truckee, and he's also with the Nevada County Sheriff's Department. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Before we left on break, we were talking about types of crime here in Truckee, and one of the areas that we had hit on were drugs, illegal drugs here in town. You mentioned that you have some numbers regarding that, and I'd like to hear them and share them with our audience. What kinds of drugs are you confiscating, and do we have manufacturing going on here in Truckee, or are they imported? Can you tell us a little bit about?
Most of the drugs in our area are imported. Marijuana is about the only thing that's grown locally,
Mm-hmm.
and it's right in the peak season for growing outdoor grows right now.
Mm-hmm.
We belong to a task force which is called the North Lake Tahoe Task Force, which it takes in Truckee, the lake, Incline Village, and then Washoe County, in addition, puts in somebody. What's amazing to me, and I got these stats just for this show, is that we've only been in this task force for 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
We've made 21 arrests already, and we've confiscated street value $928,000 worth of drugs.
Now, is that here in Truckee alone?
That's here in Truckee
$1
alone.
million worth of drugs in how many months?
In 9 months.
9 months. That's pretty scary.
It is.
That's very
And
scary.
this falls back to being at the interstate. the uncontrolled
Mhm.
airport,
Mhm.
and just it's a major distribution area.
Is there any discussion with the management at the airport about changing the way that that's done? Would that be feasible?
We've
or-
talked to them. Unfortunately, you know, we've gone through quite a few managers lately, and we have to go
Right.
back and talk to the new one. We have set up in the past and taken tail numbers
Mhm.
for customs
Mhm.
and let them do the follow-up because they can work outside the area. What we have learned is that flying the Eastern Sierra
Mhm.
from Mexico to Truckee is very easy, and you're below radar. So that makes it real easy to fly into this
I
airport.
see.
Plus, we just arrested a gentleman. It was in the paper a couple weeks ago in Texas that was driving down to Texas, actually flying, renting a car, and then driving the drugs back to Truckee, and then giving them to somebody else to distribute. So.
Does this then become a distribution point because of its proximity to the freeway, or is there a market here in town for those drugs?
There's a market, and I can't tell you how big it is because you know it's a very tight kept secret.
Mhm.
But because of the freeway and again of the airport, it's a good distribution area.
No, we made it maybe a little too easy for these
Yeah.
people to distribute drugs
Yeah.
here.
And they know that we don't have many people that work drugs, and being a small, tight-knit community, not many people talk about it.
It still sounds as though with the inter-county cooperation you have that we may be making some headway there.
Well, we're making headway, yes.
Do you feel that you're grabbing people at the top of these drug rings, if you will, or are you finding people more towards the bottom and not nabbing the source of the problem?
A little bit of both. We've done everything from the street seller to a major distribution center already. We did the 50 pounds of mushrooms a few months ago, and that got rid of a distribution area in Reno, and we could not have done that without the task force. I can have a deputy stop somebody on the street and make a bust,
Mhm.
but the task force gives us the ability and the manpower to do follow-up, not only in our area, but you know, go to Reno, go to Sacramento,
Wherever this person's contacts may be.
wherever
and
they
follow
may
up on
be,
that.
and then we can follow up and give that information to other agencies.
You mentioned mushrooms that would be hallucinogenic.
That's correct.
What other kinds of drugs are we finding here?
We're finding cocaine, LSD, marijuana, just you name it, it's here.
The same familiar names
Yes,
that
the
we hear
same
again in
familiar
the
names,
urban
yes.
areas.
LSD, I might add, is coming back. It was kind of out of the picture for a while, and it's a cheap drug to produce. Doesn't cost much. The last time we worked an LSD case out of the school, it was going for $1 a hit. So, you know, it's cheap.
And popular too
popular.
with the high school students. Yeah, they're coming back with bell bottoms then,
Yes.
which isn't necessarily
Yeah.
a good thing either
No,
way.
no.
Okay. Well, that's a little disparaging, but I'm glad to hear that there's inter-county cooperation going on, and maybe
Right.
we'll be able to get a handle on it from there. Let's talk a little bit about some solutions, if we can. First of all, neighborhood watch programs. Are there any here in Truckee?
We have one neighborhood watch program that is somewhat active. It's out in the Prosser Lakeview area. We've presented neighborhood watch presentations to other homeowner associations, but it's never taken off. That, at least in our view, is one of the best deterrents there is, especially in an area where there are a lot of second homes, where maybe only one person on a street is a permanent resident, the rest are
Full-time
second home.
year-round.
And neighborhood watch is real easy.
Mhm.
It's not that time consuming. All it requires is that you get to know your neighbors and that you have an open communication with your neighbors so you know who's supposed to be coming to and from their homes.
If you see a moving van and you know they're not supposed to
Yeah.
be there, that's a red
Yes.
flag. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. I think that maybe some people shy away from neighborhood watch because they think it means fink or that they'll have to go testify against hoodlums and thugs. What's involved and what should people expect to be involved with if, in fact, they try to start up a neighborhood watch program in their neighborhood?
Neighborhood watch, like I said, it's very basic.
Mm-hmm.
It takes one or two people in a subdivision, excuse me, to get it started and ask for our assistance, and then they need to work on the other people in their subdivision. And all it requires is the purchasing of signs, and we even may have the funding to do that, to post your subdivision, and then to look. If you see your neighbor's house is supposed to be empty and it's not a rental, and somebody pulls up, then you kind of question that. You know, you get a license number and you call us.
Be aware.
Be aware. That's all it takes.
Certainly knowing your neighbor is not a tough thing to do here
No,
in
knowing
Truckee.
your neighbor's not a tough thing to do.
Okay, well that's good to know. It sounds like it's not maybe as hard as people think.
No.
Do the signs in the neighborhoods help deter if somebody drives into, for instance, Glenshire and they saw a neighborhood watch sign? Would that be an effective deterrent or somewhat of a deterrent?
It would be somewhat of a deterrent. I can't guarantee it's going to be 100% of a
Right.
deterrent, but it would be somewhat.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps we need to talk about other ways that people can be involved. Neighborhood Watch is one. Are there any citizen awareness programs that people can...
Currently, we don't have any citizen aware. We're trying to just work with Neighborhood Watch right now. But I'm not going to tell someone not to be, even if your subdivision is not involved in Neighborhood Watch. There's nothing wrong with being curious.
Right.
If there is a problem that you feel in your neighborhood, call us. You know, we'd rather come and find out that there is not a problem than not be called and have somebody's home burglarized.
All kinds of problems.
Yes.
In talking about solutions and cures, I'm going to ask you in a little bit for a telephone number that people can call to get information from you about starting Neighborhood Watch or getting more involved in their neighborhood. We have just a few minutes left, and I would like to hear from you if you had a greater budget to work with or could reprioritize where money goes right now, where would you like to see more money spent for either crime prevention or staffing or programs in the community?
As I mentioned in the first part of the program, I'm going to the town this year asking for additional staffing. The drug enforcement officer that we currently have is being paid out of my Nevada City budget, or the county's Nevada City budget, I should say that. And I want to bring him into our budget, so that's an extra person. So I'm asking for that staffing. I feel the drug problem in Truckee is bad.
Significant.
Significant. The other one that I feel is a major, and I feel actually all four are major, but is a school resource officer. And in reviewing our calls for service at the schools, they're really not as high as I thought they were. But I have to go on what I've been told by at least the assistant principal at the high school. He knows we're busy, so he tries to handle a lot of the problems that we should be called on just in-house.
So you may not even know some of the problems.
Some of
that
the
are going on.
problems. And in addition to dealing with problems, a school resource officer will give us somebody in the schools, and I'm talking all the schools, because he will be assigned to visit all the schools. Give us a better PR, if you want to say public relations, with the kids. Let them understand that they don't have to be afraid to talk to us. You know, we do good things and we do bad things. You know, we may arrest you, but we can shake your hand too.
Right.
Yeah.
Not
So
the
we're
bad guy.
hoping with a school resource officer, the kids will be able to talk to us if they have problems. We're there as a counselor. If they want to get a problem corrected, we'll be there to correct it. And just the general hand-to-hand talking, whatever you want. Interfacing is an old term. But and this officer, the school resource officer, will also continue our DARE program, which we have going in the 5th grades right now.
So really a more proactive approach to preventing crime before it
Yes.
even gets started. And we
That-
talked about some other things here too today about locking your home and locking your car, simple measures you can take to help prevent crime. Certainly if we don't invite crime into our neighborhoods, we're going to be a little bit better off, make your job a little easier, make our lives a little bit nicer to live.
That's correct.
In closing, Jack, I'd like, if you would, to share with our audience the telephone number that they can contact if they need information on Neighborhood Watch. Perhaps they're interested in forming a Neighborhood Watch community or any other kinds of information that they may need from the sheriff. Who should they contact and what telephone number should they use?
Our general business number is 58. Specifically talk to our dispatch center. That's 582-7842,
Okay.
and that's a 24-hour number.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. This certainly hasn't been a fun topic, but it's a necessary one, and I certainly appreciate you coming here today, sharing this information with our audience and with me. Your time is
Thank you.
important, and I really appreciate you coming to share that.
Well, I appreciate it. I think the community needs to know what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Byer. On later shows, we'll be discussing domestic violence. Again, not so much a very fun topic, but certainly an important one and one that we need to address. we'll also be touching on much lighter topics in the future. So we really appreciate your input, your suggestions for future shows. We look forward to hearing from you, and thank you again for joining Truckee Talks.